When we look at the Orient, Orion, and Sudupu, and the eastern border of the Pacific, and the crossing of the Asiatic, the Amu, these ancient people, these ancient kings, Kohen, when we look at the big kahunas in this region of 180 degrees and 150 degrees east, where we find the Orient, the land of the rising sun, Ori, or, light. And then we look at the NT, we got noon. We understand noon, the sprouting air, the noon. And T, the mark, the tab. So we look at the Orient and this crossing mark. This is why the winter solstice in this time of this so-called New Year is celebrated. The ancients, when they began their crossing of the hemisphere, the great horizon, or understanding leaving this quadrant, this new quadrant of this new year, of this autumn, now crossing over into the winter, embarking in the land of Orient. So we look at this is really out of America that we're talking about. This is this transition following these oracles of beginning from the beginning of the year of Autumn, the Virgo, the mother, the Amazon, to cross over now, leaving this quadrant into the time of June, into the time of the Gemini, during the time of the first fruit. So understand why the 33 degrees when we have the Masons. We understand that Virgo, September, and this time coming across into the time of May. Masons, Amazons. So these Amu, Asiatic travelers, traveled these lands and transition following this stellar mythos. So when we look at the calendar in Janus in January, Yanu, and the Yan
by technology
and
force them to change their traditional food collection customs. They have been forced to hunt deer, which they have never done before. It is a difficult choice, and the tribe's women still refuse to eat it, relying solely on fish. Lack of food security is not the only consequence of interactions with poachers. Knowing that they are not welcome, armed with rifles and willing to use them against the Jarowas, poachers refused to listen. What they didn't take into account was the original reputation of this warrior tribe. Unaffected by technology or any other influences of modern civilization, you might expect there is a large social divide between the norms of the tribe and outsiders. But once you take a glimpse at the way they see the world, you remember there are parts of our human nature that connect us all.
Over jagan mera tai kolatu na roti papi note ade mia ta chale li mahu ai pamha da mahu ela mohali aji kawade wate pale tu malin tu ki pale kada ti wate pale katino na ti velal ote kaya nginto ageti ngorta ti avilu te kweta arte Adi te tante panal.
And that is Michael J. White. 1, get up. 2, get up. And finally, hot people. Ladies and gentlemen, we are living here with Adodupong and Odupoma. I can see Otenehu, Kofu, Akoto, and Fern, our king. You are now traditionally clothed, and now you are home. We can identify you by your cloth as one of us.
The significance of Cain, and we look at the kingship, and we understand the ancient traditions of the orient and the El Nahar and the dwelling place. And we understand the sitting, the resting, the Shabbat, Shalom, Solomon, the kingship, and the stools of the priest kings. Melchizedek order. This order aligned with the heaven and earth with these mythos. We understand the Kain and the land of the Orient and Cain and the ocean and this ocean navigator. Oceania. We understand kings. This is the coronation and the crown of the head. We have to understand language and deciphering and recording of these ancients that developed mythos. We look at the dog song of the Dogon and the priesthood and this east. When we look at Australopithecus, we have to understand what we're talking about. This is when we talk about this out of the top. So we look at the Orient and this crossing mark. This is why the winter solstice in this time of this so-called New Year is celebrated. The ancients, when they began their crossing of the hemisphere, the great horizon, or understanding leaving this quadrant, this new quadrant of this new year, of this autumn, now crossing over into the winter, embarking in the land of Orient. So we look at Cain and the mark and the significance of Cain, and we look at the kingship, and we understand the ancient traditions of the orient and the El Nahar and the dwelling place. And we understand the sitting, the resting, the Shabbat, Shalom, Solomon, the kingship, and the stools of the priest kings. Melchizedek order. This order aligned with the heaven and earth with these mythos. We understand the Kain and the land of the Orient and Cain and the ocean. So when we look at Osiris and the seat of judgment and the funerary processions are essential to understanding the migrations of the ancients who circumnavigated the earth following the soul, the sun, through the tropics. This is the funerary processions. When we look at the parades of Carnival and the marching of the saints and the following of the suns across the Pacific, these ancient navigators here from the eastern border of the Pacific followed this star constellation of Osiris, Orion. This is why we call these lands the Orient, to be crowned in their return again as another year as kings. We understand a race. They usually say, on your mark, get set, go. So the marking that was placed upon Cain. Cain is one of the first people in the scriptures, the biblical text,